Today we're going to talk about history and approaches to psychology. Starting at the beginning, we're going to focus on philosophy. Early philosophers began to look at the workings of the mind to understand reality. Socrates and his student Plato believed that the mind is separate from the body and continues after the body dies. They also believed that knowledge is innate, or that someone is born with all of the knowledge they'll ever have. Aristotle was Plato's student, and he believed that knowledge is not pre-existing, but it grows from experiences and is stored in the mind. René Descartes believed in dualism. The mind and the body are separate entities that interact to form the human experience. Francis Bacon believed that the human mind had two accounts, the physical composition and then the behavior of individuals. John Locke believed at birth that the mind was a blank slate in which experiences write on it. This led to the development of empiricism. What we know comes from experience, observation, and experimentation. Physiology, another definition for you, is a science that deals with the way living things function, such as organs, tissues, and cells. This picture here shows you all of the different components of physiology. If I take philosophy and physiology and combine it together, I get psychology. Psychology is the scientific study of behavior and the mind. The study of psychology applies the following: scientific method, observable behavior, the question of how the mind and body interact, and the question of nature versus nurture. How do they work together, and is one more important than the other? Wilhelm Wundt is known as the founder of psychology. He established the first lab in 1879 in Germany, and he's famous for the reaction time experiment. G. Stanley Hall brought Wundt's ideas to America. His first research lab at Johns Hopkins, and he founded the first American Psychological Journal. To this day, the American Psychological Association, or the APA, also owes its roots to G. Stanley Hall. On this picture here on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see several colleges that were all founded by students of famous early psychologists. Things are not black and white in psychology. Through research and experiments, many competing theories and schools of thought have developed. Each school of thought or perspective explains behavior in a different way. One of these is structuralism. This studies how the structure of an experience can be broken down into its component parts. This was introduced by Edward Titchener. It uses introspection, the careful, systematic self-observation of one's own conscious experience. It required training, though, to make the subject more objective and more aware. Introspection can be used to explain an experience's structure. For example, a match is lit. If that's the case, you would describe the smell, the color, and hearing the strike. But there's one problem with introspection, is that everyone's experiences can be described differently. Functionalism looks at how the experience allows organisms to function better in their environment. This studies the adaptation of living persons to their environment. William James uses the influence of Charles Darwin's natural selection to explain people's adaptive behaviors. He is credited with developing the first textbook, The Principles of Psychology. Notable women in psychology. The first is Mary Calkins. She actually earned a PhD from Harvard, but she was offered a PhD from Radcliffe instead. She refused the degree. She became the first female APA president. Margaret Floy Washburn was the first female psychology PhD. She was the second female APA president. She was published by Wundt, and she was barred from joining the Organization of Experimental Psychologists because of her gender. And then we have Dorothea Dix. She saw the mistreatment of mentally ill in prisons, and she pressured lawmakers to construct and fund asylums for the mentally ill. As psychological science matures, we notice that there is a shift. And a lot of the people that we are going to be talking about in this next section, we will continue talking about throughout the rest of the year. So, as the first ideas of psychology focused on introspection, that idea was challenged in the 1920s by several American psychologists who redefined psychology as the scientific study of observable behavior. They concluded what you cannot observe, you cannot scientifically study as science, and that science is rooted in observation. Behaviorism is the school of thought that they developed, and it's also a perspective that we will focus on in this class. Three of the main names for behaviorism: Ivan Pavlov, John B. Watson, and B.F. Skinner. Ivan Pavlov is famous for his experiment on dogs and saliva, which we will talk about later this year. John B. Watson thought that psychology should be known as the science of behavior, with the goal to observe overt behaviors and to predict and control behaviors, and he is famous for the baby Albert experiment. B.F. Skinner brought behaviorism back into conversation in the 1950s, and he studies how consequences like rewards and punishments shape behavior. He is credited with something called operant conditioning. Another school of thought or perspective developed during the 1920s, psychoanalytic or psychoanalysis. This was developed by Sigmund Freud. It's based on the unconscious mind. Freud believed that many behaviors are a result of thoughts and desires that manifest at a level below one's conscious awareness. He believed behaviors are also based on childhood experiences. He believed that structuralism, functionalism, and behaviorism all studied the conscious mind, but really we wanted to focus on the unconscious mind. He treated mental disorders through therapy by bringing repressed or hidden memories to the conscious mind. And he worked a lot with dream interpretation. Humanistic psychology is an optimistic view of human nature. People are not pawns of neither their animal heritage nor their environmental circumstances. People are also, they also have free will or the ability to direct their own lives. Humanistic psychology also focuses on the potential for one person's personal growth or to become self-actualized. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow are two big names in humanistic psychology. Carl Rogers believed that people are basically good and each of us is primed for growth, where Abraham Maslow focused on the hierarchy of needs and that physiological needs must be met before moving up to other needs. Gestalt psychology by Max Wertheimer focused on the fact that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So if I look down here in the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll see three circles, almost like bullseyes, either in like kind of a pyramid shape. And your brain wants to automatically see a triangle, but there's actually not a triangle drawn. Your brain is trying to make sense of a larger picture from the parts that it is given. Additionally, the picture up at the top right of your screen shows Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we will cover more when we talk about humanistic psychology. Finally, the biopsychosocial approach. This incorporates 3 levels of analysis to offer a more complex picture of any given behavior or mental process. Biological, psychological, and sociocultural are complementary viewpoints that work together to describe behavior. This is the most comprehensive view of psychology we have to date. Additionally, there is positive psychology, where there is focus more on human flourishing, not just understanding and treating troubles. Positive psychologists believe that happiness is a byproduct of a pleasant, engaged, and meaningful life. And positive psychology uses the scientific method to explore building a good life that engages our skills and a meaningful life that points beyond ourselves.